the secret laboratories of early Venice. The Republic strictly policed its citizens, yet lawmakers built hidden furnaces in their own homes. A shattered glass vessel coated in black ash sits in the dark. It is hidden beneath the floorboards of a grand palazzo. Above it, aristocrats draft laws against fraud and heresy. Below it, the heat is intense. The air smells of sulfur and metallic dust. This is not a rogue operation. It is an institution. Wealthy families sponsored these hidden spaces. They built them away from the public eye. They shielded them from the inquisitors. The Roman Inquisition hunted religious nonconformists. They hunted magical claims, but they rarely breached these particular walls. The elites controlled the city. They also controlled the shadows. They funded a clandestine experimental culture. It thrived on extreme heat. The ashes remain. The scorch marks on the stone tell a quiet story. A story of fire, discipline, and absolute power.
The stone does not lie. Architectural concealment requires deliberate effort. You do not build a furnace by accident. You do not hide it without a reason. Modern archaeology reveals the truth of these spaces. Beneath the imported marble, investigators find residues. They find charred crucibles. They find scorched vessels. These are the tools of extreme heat. They indicate repeated cycles of calcination and sublimation. They indicate smelting, roasting, and distillation. The work was brutal. It required intense physical labor. It required vast amounts of fuel. Wood turned to ash. Ash accumulated in thick deposits. The vessels were specialized. They were designed for separating and recombining substances. The most telling residue is mercury. Mercury was central to early modern theories of matter. It was used in metallurgy. It was used to make pigments. It was used in experimental medicine. Its vapor is heavy. Its traces seep into the porous stone. It stays there for centuries. These traces do not prove a quest for immortality. They do not prove the transmutation of base metals into gold. They prove something much more practical. They prove technical, physical work. The rooms were working laboratories. They were not theatrical ritual chambers. There were no dark altars. There were only workbenches and fire. The process was dirty. The air was thick with toxic fumes. The operators wore heavy leather aprons. They watched the color of the flame. The temperature had to be exact. A sudden change in heat could shatter the glass. It could ruin weeks of labor. The physical reality of these spaces contradicts the myth. The myth speaks of isolated wizards. The reality speaks of industry. It was a private, highly disciplined industry. The materials were expensive. Glassware had to be custom blown. Ores had to be imported through the vast Venetian trade network. The operations required constant funding. They required space. Elite residences offered both. They offered privacy. They offered storage. They offered servants to tend the fires. The hidden rooms were deeply embedded in the domestic architecture. The heat from the crucible radiated through the walls. The scent of roasted metal lingered in the corridors. Yet it was kept entirely out of public records. The silence was bought and paid for.
The men feeding the fires were not the lords of the manor. The aristocrats provided the walls, but others did the work. They were respected physicians. They were skilled artisans. They were apothecary-linked specialists. They operated the furnaces under the strict protection of their sponsors. This was the true nature of the Venetian underground. It was an alliance of class and craft. The nobles did not soil their hands with soot. They sponsored household experts. They gave them a safe haven. Comparative evidence from across Italy confirms this pattern. Medici Florence maintained similar laboratories. They built them in elite architectural complexes. The Casino di San Marco housed such rooms. These courtly laboratories combined alchemy with glassmaking.
They combined it with jewelry work. The experimental rooms in Venetian palaces followed this model. They were highly multifunctional spaces. The practitioners moved freely between trades. A glassmaker knew the secrets of heat. A metallurgist knew how to extract pure elements. A physician sought new medicines through distillation. They brought this knowledge to the hidden palace rooms. They worked together. They pushed the boundaries of natural inquiry. But they operated in a dangerous gray zone. The term forbidden requires careful use. The Roman Inquisition did not always prosecute alchemy. It showed limited direct interest in the practice itself. The danger arose from association. Legal and theological traditions allowed intervention under specific conditions. Authorities struck when alchemy linked to deception. They struck when it linked to heresy. They struck when it involved controversial medical claims. The practitioners knew this risk. The Venetian Inquisitorial Archive is one of the richest in Italy. It shows a strong overlap between medical conflict and religious nonconformity. Unconventional knowledge invited suspicion. A legitimate experiment could easily look like dangerous intellectual rebellion. It could look like fraud. The aristocratic shield was essential. Without it, the artisans would face the tribunal. With it, they worked in peace. The nobles possessed enough social power to block outside scrutiny. They owned the judges. They owned the investigators. The law stopped at their front door. The artisans knew their survival depended on the patron. The patron knew the artisan held the key to new wealth. It was a transaction. It was a deeply pragmatic arrangement. The heavy doors remained locked.
The word ritual implies chanting men in dark robes. It suggests anti-church worship. The 16th century reality was far colder. Inside the Venetian palazzo, the rituals were strictly mechanical. They were disciplined sequences of physical chemistry. Men stood before roaring furnaces. They measured time by the shifting colors of the flame. They watched matter change state inside custom-blown glass. The cryptic language they used sounded like witchcraft. They wrote of sulfur, salt, and the elusive quintessence. It was actually an encrypted technical manual. It protected industrial secrets from competitors. The Inquisition feared what it could not decipher. Judges saw hidden notebooks and assumed malice. They linked unexplained chemistry to deception and heresy. But the men in the leather aprons were not praying. They were forcing solid ores into vapor. They were cooling distilled liquids. It was an exhausting cycle of calcination and sublimation. If they were not practicing forbidden magic, what exactly were they trying to extract from the heat?
The ash deposits hold a quiet truth. The foundation of early physical science was not built in pristine academies. It was forged in the dark. The overlap of trade, printing, and medicine in Venice drove this work. The men in the basements experimented with high-temperature distillation. They advanced metallurgy. They refined medicinal crafts. The irony is structural. Lawmakers condemned illicit knowledge in the public squares, yet they funded it in their private cellars. The Venetian elite bankrolled the exact men they were tasked with policing. Aristocracy bought time and raw materials. It bought silence from the Roman Inquisition. The shattered glass under the floorboards is not the debris of failed magic. It is the physical residue of progress. They stripped the mysticism away. Only the mechanics remained. These hidden laboratories tested the boundaries of the 16th century natural world. What other modern disciplines were born in the ashes of a hidden crucible?
The modern laboratory is sterile. It is brightly lit. It operates under strict institutional oversight. It is everything the Venetian underground was not. Yet the lineage is unbroken. The scientific method was not born in a pristine academy. It was born in the soot and the fear. The shattered glass vessel still sits in the dark. It is no longer just a relic of a forbidden act. It is the first heavy footprint of the modern age. We trust the science of today because men in the shadows risked everything to observe the physical world. They separated matter from meaning. The lawmakers who hid the furnaces understood one critical fact. Control of nature is the ultimate power.
The ashes beneath the floorboards are not the remnants of failed magic. They are the exact cost of early truth.